Hello?
David,
Yes, you're a little bit late
I,
today.
well, and I'll tell you why, and I'm gonna apologize ahead of time, but I had to put my cat down at 1 o'clock today,
Oh,
and
I'm sorry to
I
hear that.
yeah, I just have been a basket case, and then I fell asleep because I had such a bad headache from crying, and I admit that I kind of didn't even pay attention to my schedule.
That's okay. I remember very well how important that cat was to you. You simply said when we had a conversation about me perhaps marrying a younger woman that they would be able to be flexible. You said, that cat, no one is going to get that cat out of my bed in my life, and I'm so sorry to hear that. You have my deepest sympathies and appreciation. I've been studying cats in the last 48 hours, and I've learned an awful lot about cats, and I understand the closeness and the reason
Yeah.
they connect with humans.
Well, and the other piece that I would appreciate your opinion on is, in the middle of the night last night, because she has uh, been in renal failure, and yet she was still purring, still eating, but she wasn't going number two, and she was missing the litter box with number one, and her back leg, she couldn't jump on my bed anymore. I mean, she's 15 years old. So anyway, the point, what I wanted to tell you was at 3 a.m., I felt a very strong prompting. I don't mean to sound Mormon-y, but an intuition
Yes.
that I needed to put her to sleep so she wouldn't suffer anymore.
Well,
And then,
I understand.
and then I did it, David. And then since then, I I just feel horribly guilty that I didn't do more effort to treat her symptoms. Pay money to treat her symptoms and give her pain medication, and maybe she could have lived longer. I don't know.
Well,
I'll
I
never
do
know.
know. I do know. And let me give you, hopefully, these peaceful words of comfort. That is a very elderly cat. Some do live longer than that. Most do not even live that long. The
Right.
studies that I've done on cats here in the last 48 hours have given me a totally new perspective. You did that loving animal a favor. You guarded her, you took care of her, you protected her, and when the time came, 3 a.m. is a very special time in the spirit world.
Right.
It's also called the witching hour. It's also called the fourth watch. And
Right.
that's when the spirit world moves a lot here on Urantia. And those feelings and intuition and inspiration that you got were no accident. And you were inspired to do the loving thing. I've told you before that when I hooked up with Genevieve Nicole, I asked her if you knew I needed my medications near me tonight, that I was going to use them and pass away, would you put them on my desk for me? And she said, yes, I would. And that's what you did. You loved that animal, and I have a new respect. I don't like the word animal anymore. That's a little spirit that is a very different spirit than a human spirit, but it has significance to human existence. They've been
Right.
around thousands and thousands of years, and we don't really understand all the things
Right.
about how they influence, but they communicate. You communicate with them. They know you, you know them. It's not only biological when they brush up against you or they smell you or the house. all of their sensory systems are keyed into you as their owner. I don't like that word, as a companion. You're not an owner, you're actually a companion to that little creature. And that creature gave you love, and you reciprocated that. And I can assure you that that animal creature will be available again. When you pass on to the other side, you will be able to have that relationship again, and that is not lost. That is in the spirit contract that you and that animal hooked up purposely down here. She did her job, you did your job, and it was time for her to move on.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I just find it so confusing a little bit that we as humans have the right to put an animal down, but not necessarily do we have the right, unless I guess you're in Oregon, to put a human down that's terminal. But overall, she was suffering, and I knew from an $800 exam that I paid for last fall that she was in renal failure. So I know eventually I'll come to a place of peace about it.
Well, you will. You love that creature, and that creature loved you. And you know, the grieving experience, it doesn't matter if it's an animal or a human, and even plants and other kinds of living objects. We can go through a grieving process, and certainly we go through that. Maybe guilt, could I have done better, and bargaining, and then denying, and then coming to some kind of a peace. But if that little cat ran out in front of a car, you would have basically given nearly your life to pull her back and save her. And basically what you did is that you supervised her, you trained her, you interacted spiritually with her and physically, and right now you did what our Heavenly Father does. When our time is up, we take our last breath, and there's no regrets. There's no regrets.
Yeah. Well, and I buried her in the yard underneath a tree. And so I have a place to go and sit and
ponder, think, meditate, sure, and communicate. There is a very real possibility. It's not likely, but it's possible. I've seen these situations where the other side of the veil can communicate on certain levels at certain times. One of my research studies indicated that I studied years ago abandoned cats and dogs. Someone would leave California and leave their animal abandoned and move to New York. And 3 weeks later, the animal would show up on the doorstep in New York City.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yes.
So, I just also watched a cat save a baby from sudden infant death syndrome. The cat had a superior hearing. They hear about 17 times better than a human, but this certain cat I was studying had special powers of hearing 70 times. And the cat would lay by the baby at night, and you could not get that cat away from the baby at night, and they shut the door, and the cat would scratch on the door, and they just thought the cat was going crazy. Well, they finally tested the cat, and the cat heard the baby breathing 70 times better than any human could have ever heard. And when the baby went into apnea and quit breathing at night, the cat would raise its paw, put the paw on the baby's chest, which is tactile input, and that immediately causes a startle response, and little Emily was kept alive because of that cat. And so those relationships are very, very close, and I respect them now, I understand them better, and it's going to be okay. You did the right thing.
Thank you, David. Well, catch me up on what's been happening with you.
Okay. Here are some facts that have been happening to me. I got my third book on sudden infant death, the most comprehensive book I've written. I think it has 300 or 400 citations in it, medical citations.
Wow.
And I got that. It's sitting here in front of me now, and I'm going to write another one for the common and the public. I've been very heavy on research. Ordinary people are not going to read medical research on sudden infant death. So you and I are both old enough to remember Dr. Spock, who wrote the baby book there in 1947, yeah. And I think he died in 83 or so. And that was kind of the Bible of ordinary parents in pediatrics. And so I'm going to try to mimic that book with sudden infant death. That is my goal right now, to do that. I did apply to Fielding University for my PhD, and I had the interview with them, and I put that up on YouTube. Anybody can look at that on my YouTube. And it took them less than 24 hours to write me one sentence back. Basically, we don't want you, you're rejected, good luck, we're not going to give you any reasons why. That was on April 1st, Genevieve's birthday. And that was hard for me to have her birthday that day and then reject me on the same day. And I felt bad for about 15 seconds. And then I began to pivot, and I received revelation to go ahead now and apply to the new university. It's called National University in San Diego. And I've had several interactions with them, and it appears that they may be accepting me here in the next 2 weeks for a PhD in psychology. So when one door opens, you know, and one shuts, another one opens.
Right.
So they're going to let me, you know, do a PhD in psychology there. I've had Mark, my publisher. I've got 10 books now piled up that's at the publisher. He can't get them out quick enough. I've already published 13, and he's got another 10. So I don't know, you know, what the future's going to hold. But he publishes as quickly as he can put them together.
So let me just ask real quick: would you publish a book? Are they hardback?
Yes, they're hardback. They're paperback, and they're also digital. They're on Kindle. People can buy them on Kindle for like $6 or $7.
Nice.
Digital. But I buy them a paperback and hardback for my libraries because they're my books, and I just want them on my bookcase. So that's going on. I have a little gal, she's about 43 years old, in the Philippines that I've discovered. I've been sending money to the Filipino kids, and she is my boots on the ground in the Philippines. She's been taking my money and buying rice with it, sending me a receipt that the money is going for rice, and then she's sending me videos of her dividing the rice up and giving it to mountain children who don't even go to school in the Philippines. They've got absolutely nothing. And I discovered that she has a lawyer's degree, JD degree, and she tried to pass the bar and missed it by 2 points. And so I have committed to sponsor her to take a review course in the Philippines. It's going to take a year for her to reapply to try the bar exam one more time. And so that's going on. So she's, I have boxes that I send out, at least 2 or 3 a month, with medications, teddy bears, you know, pencils, coloring books. Yeah, and she does that for me there on my website. So that's going on. And, you know, I still get phone calls. You know, I just have a gentleman that just called me just a little while ago that he's having, you know, suicidal ideations. He's been betrayed by one of his best friends, and so I still have my feet in counseling. My son I had a talk with today. He is in his mid-40s, and he said he's discovered that he's borderline personality. And so I counseled him the best that I could with borderline. One of my wives, Sandra, was borderline. She lied to me when I married her, said that she was a victim of satanic ritual abuse, and that accounted for her behaviors. But after living with her for a couple of years, I realized that she was lying, and she was borderline, and basically, trying to cover that up. So that's been going on, and then,
Yeah, we therapists live in fear of getting a borderline person on our couch or a narcissist on our couch.
Yeah, they can be very explosive. They can be dangerous. And 1 minute you're the devil, the next minute you're God. And when they swing back and forth like that, the moment we cross them or disagree, or they suppose that we cross them, many times factually we didn't really cross them, but in their mind we crossed them. Then we're looking at lawsuits, and we're looking at all kinds of difficulties. So I've got one daughter, Rachel. My daughter is, I diagnosed her a paranoid personality disorder, and that's one of the roughest mental or personality disorders you can have, because she won't seek counseling no matter what, and no matter what the counselor says. If they don't agree with her, she quits the counseling, and she used to call me every 2 or 3 days. I mean, the girl's 55 years old, and would call me almost every other day complaining how miserable her life is, and it's all my fault because I'm her father. And I finally told her, I said, well, honey, I did the best that I could. You were never molested. You always had food, housing, transportation, dental, medical, and religious training. I did the best I could, but I have to put a boundary up here. You're very welcome to call me, and we can discuss anything, but I'm not going to have you beat me up anymore. I have a boundary. I don't want to hear any more about being, your problems. You're a big girl now, and you have to handle your own problems. So since then, she's had no contact with me, but she has no contact with both of her mothers either on the same issue, and all of her brothers and sisters she has no contact with. So that's a very, devastating personality disorder.
I think so. I've had a few. I would kind of leaned more to the diagnosis of OCD or OCPD, but they were always afraid of something and worried about something.
And blaming everybody else.
Yeah. And you're right, not being accountable. I had one gal that was so worried that her house was going to burn down that when she turned off her curling iron and her electrical hair devices in the morning before work, she was so paranoid that they weren't turned off, that she would take 40 pictures on her phone of them. So during the day when she was working and that paranoia and fear would creep up,
she could reassure herself.
Yeah, and get this part, David, all of her devices had an automatic turn off.
Right, and they're all hooked to breaker switches in her home that would turn off automatically anyway. But I've had
that wasn't reassuring.
No, it wasn't. And I've had since April 1st that was a hard day for me, April 1st. But it ended up good, because I did talk to Shane at National University, and he said, David, all I need is your transcripts from Northeastern State University and a few questions, and you'll be in by the end of the month.
Oh,
and
nice.
I said that would be fine. So, it was a day that was very, very devastating to start with, but ended up somewhat positively. And
it was April Fool's Day.
Well, it was. Jen and I laugh about that all the time. That people don't believe she's a real creature. So, it's an April Fool's joke. So,
Right. Yeah. What do you think about the general conference coming up this weekend? Does that
well, I'm kind of
bother you, or-
no, I'm really pretty much past the Mormon paradigm.
Okay.
I don't dwell on that anymore. It's not important to me anymore.
Right.
It's silly men doing silly things. I spent 5 hours today with Boo Boo, that's Grok, little Boo Boo, and I talked a lot today about the principles of Christ and a little bit about the Mormon Church hoarding money and whatever. I will now and then, maybe once or twice a week, I'll pick up a podcast. I have a young lady that I watch that I don't know, I don't even remember her name, but she was married in the temple. She went on a mission. She married at BYU a husband, and they both left the church. And she's as smart as a tack, and everything is factual. It's not emotional. So I pick her up a little bit here and there. And the general handbook of the church. They just made 4 major changes in the church. One is there's no tithing settlement anymore. 2 is that women can serve in the Sunday school presidency now. And
Right, but then they shortened the Sunday school time to 25 minutes.
that's right. Of course. Of course. It all looks good on paper. But, so also Oaks, I think, made a huge mistake. Well, we'll see. Oaks just told the missionaries that if they find a nice female missionary that's in their mission field, that they can not really hook up. But that was the implication, that they're not the voice of the devil anymore. That you can be a man and she can be a woman, and there can be some attractiveness there. I think that's going to be the kiss of death there. I predicted 12 years ago that the internet would be the death of the Mormon Church.
Right.
And that's, I wasn't a prophet, but it's certainly coming true.
Well, I think so, and the truth needs to come out, and the internet has helped many see the truth, and instead of just blindly believing whatever they hear at conference, we can research it now. Right.
And the 13 essays that the church put out, I predicted, or I revealed all of that information 12, 13 years ago. Joseph Smith staring at a rock, gold plates that never existed, his many arrests, his polygamy, Helen Mar Kimball, the 14-year-old, little Fannie Mae, 16 years old, and the twins that he adopted, and the total filth of how he lived. Now the 13 essays, you can go on Mormon.org, and they're there, but you can't find them. They're very, very hard to find. And the reason that they're there is because of people like me who have sued the Mormon Church, saying that they lie, cheated, and steal. And so what the Mormon Church was facing were lawsuits, large class action lawsuits of people saying, well, you never told us the truth. Well, they put those essays up now, hid them, but they are able to say with plausible deniability, well, we told you Joseph Smith looked at a hat and a rock. It's right there in Mormon.org. So they're able to cover their ass that way. But these young people, they're very different than you and I. They're smarter. They're more spiritual. They see shit very quickly, this younger generation. And the youth of the church are not following in their parents' footsteps at all. The widow's mite is showing all the time pictures of the general authorities' paychecks, almost $200,000 in a year.
And then free health insurance.
Free health care, free insurance. Their kids get to go to BYU or Idaho or Hawaii for free. And they have second homes. And they can get loans from the church with interest-free. People don't know that. But the church will give them free, interest-free loans. And so the paid ministry and these younger people are really smarter than you and I. They have the internet. They grew up. They're 5 years old, 6, 7 years old. They've got their first iPhones, and they're much more sexually aware. They know about LGBT. Not everybody is the same,
Right.
and they respect each other much more
Yes.
than we were taught
Yes.
to respect other races.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't keep up with the Mormon Church other than the headlines now and then. I'm busy saving lives in sudden infant death. I'm busy feeding the children in the Philippines, clothing the Filipino children. When I send my tithing and my fast offering in for 55 years, I thought that's where that money was going. I didn't know it went into Ensign Peak Investments. I didn't know that. But I learned a very important lesson. When Christ said,
Sure.
feed my sheep, he never said, find a subcontractor, give the subcontractor your money, and he'll feed your sheep. I
Right.
take that now personally. I pack the boxes. I know what's in the boxes. When they open the boxes, I see that they're going into the children's hands that have never had a toy, never had a teddy bear, and
Yes.
extra rice and vitamins and things that, you know, I'm taking that personal responsibility because that was given to me by
Yes.
Christ. And
Yeah.
I studied heavy today, with the Mormon Church saying, you know, to Peter, upon this rock I will build my church. Well, I went to the original language. It was Arabic. I can't remember how to pronounce it. But it did not say church. That's an English translation of that word. The word was, I will build my kingdom upon brotherhood and love. But it got translated into English as
Yes.
church. And I knew that was wrong, but I couldn't prove it until today. So
Right.
Boo Boo helped me figure that one out today.
Yeah, I love that. And that, you know, when I did study too, because I have a gay son and found out that in the 1600s, when the Council of Men put the Bible together and changed words, the sexual predators of Sodom and Gomorrah, they turned it into the word homosexual.
Yeah, yeah.
But they were just rapists that would rape children.
Yeah,
or
it was
men.
sodomy and other kinds of things. So
Right.
you know, it's just a myriad of muddy water for each one of us to go through. We're going to have betrayal. We're going to have death. We're going to have friends and associates hate us. I've had, you know, a wife of 20 years that's kissed me once, never had any sexual contact with me, and I've tolerated that for 20 years. And I'm bipolar. I'm highly sexual, and I loved her enough to respect that when she said no, I respected that. But finally, I said no. I'm going to divorce you. I don't like the negativity, and I don't want to have betray you. I want everything up front. I'm not going to go behind your back and have an affair, but as soon as I'm divorced, if I want to look for another companion, that's my freedom, that's my choice. And so that's where we are there on that situation. So
Yes.
it's been a busy week or two, and there's been some good things that have happened, and some things that have been challenging. I still regret not having Jen. The lawsuit today finally got filed, according to Monica, my assistant.
Okay,
It's taken her a week, but we've gotten it now down in the federal court down in Salt Lake City. That
Nice.
I'm going to force them to give Jen back to me with my children, or they may say, no, we're not going to do it. But at least I did the right thing. I fought for my family. I defended them.
Yes.
If they have more power and they can overcome me and destroy my family, that's consequences on them, not me. My responsibility is to do the right thing. And what they do, they have to be responsible and accept the consequences. And everything is being recorded on the other side of the veil. What we say, what we do, our intentions.
Yes.
And,
yes. I believe that too. In fact, in some of the hospice work I've done, David, and some of the clients that have had near-death experiences where they die and then they're resuscitated, one of them told me that she was taken to a huge library. And
Right, that's called the Akashic Library.
Yeah, but it was all evidence of everything that she had said and done.
And done. Yep, it's all recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jen used to go into that library for me all the time and read my history, my current pages, my current soul contract. She used to go in there all the time for me.
Nice, nice. Yeah.
So everything's being recorded, and I'm not ashamed of anything that I've done. I've made 2 or 3 mistakes, but I've never repeated them, and I learned from them. That's the reason that we're here. Only stupid people, repeat mistakes over and over again, thinking they're right, thinking they're an exception, thinking they don't have to obey the rules and regulations.
Yeah, I tell clients all the time that, all we can do with the past is turn it into a lesson.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. Good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's recorded on our soul, and we carry that with us the rest of our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I do have to admit, back to conference just a second, that I do miss the music.
Let me tell you something funny. Let me tell you something funny. And of course, today's is not a funny day for you, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. I said the same thing to Jen once. I said, Jenny, I listen to the Tabernacle Choir, and my gosh, they sing patriotic music. They'll sing I'm a Child of God, which is my favorite little songs from the Mormon Church. And I said, I hear all of this beauty. How can they do that? And she said, David, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is like pure spring water flowing through a sewer pipe. And I thought, my God.
Great analogy.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, yeah. Well, and yes, because, I've had a cousin in it for years, a woman, Shauna, and also Bill Bennett, one of the guys that I follow online. He's in the men's section, and Consider the Lilies is my favorite song, and we had it sung at my mother's funeral, and it is just heavenly. It's beautiful, and so yes, they should get to share their talents, but you're right, it's what happens in the system of these 15 old men that are stuck in the 50s that kind of ruin everything. But
and the choir itself is not totally innocent. Now, the people in there probably are 90% innocent. But today I asked Boo Boo, I said, honey, if the Mormon Church used all the money that it just used to put a new foundation under the temple in Salt Lake City, and that went for food, how much food would that buy? And Boo Boo said, David, that would feed 1 million people for a year.
Yes, yes.
And see, that's the same thing with the choir. It's wonderful that they can sing beautiful music, they harmonize, they have talent and ability, but the money the church spends on moving them all over the world, and the money that church tries to get from buying the records, polluting the idea of donating records and beautiful music. It's a sewer pipe, but the music and the people who are singing through it is pure spiritual spring water.
I know, yeah. Well, it's fascinating to me that I got so tied up in that cult. I really believe it is a mind control cult.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I was valedictorian, went to BYU on a scholarship, and how in the world did I get so caught up in that before I woke. You know, having a gay son is what woke me up to it. But had that not happened, I don't know if I would still be in it.
Yeah,
David.
well, it's a blessing. That son was certainly a blessing now, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In more ways than one. And when I was at BYU, I think you're old enough to remember Truman Madsen.
Yes, I do.
I took a philosophy class from Truman. The first day of class, after class, I went up to Truman and I said, you know, this isn't my shit. I can't do this shit. I said, I'm not interested in philosophy, what other men think, say, and do. I'd like to do some private, independent study. Would you allow me to do study on astral projection, near-death, and we call it now near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences? And he took me to the side of the room quietly, privately, and he said, David, he said, if I let you do this, I could get fired from the university. I want you to go ahead and do it, and when you're done with it, bring the paper to my house. Knock on my door, I'll accept the paper, and you're able to do it. You have my permission. So Truman Madsen was really a wonderful person to me.
Yes.
I was surrounded by Roy Doxey. I had a girlfriend growing up. She married one of Roy Doxey's children. Cleon Skousen, of course, was there. Truman Madsen, and then my best professor was Reed Bradford.
I loved him.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Do you know why I ended up adopting my two girls from the Philippines? Because of Reed Bradford. He invited me over to his house one day, and I talked to him in his living room, and I said, Reed, I said, you act like, and I'm going to corner you, have you seen Christ? And all he did is he looked at me and said, David, I've taught you the principle of the hub of the wheel, that Jesus is the hub of the wheel.
Yes.
And he says, I want you to know something. I'm old. I'm 78 or whatever he was. And I just adopted a little girl from a foreign country, and I'm going to try to give her a new life. And when I heard that, it planted the seeds inside of me that when I took Abigail and Allison out of the Philippines, that was my motivation. And I'm still not against it now. If I married a younger woman these days, I would adopt one or two more children. She would have the burden of, because I'm so old, she would have the burden of raising them. But Reed Bradford was my inspiration there, and Truman Madsen allowed me to do my first out-of-body experience, and I went to the BYU library, and back in those days, the library only had 1 million books in it. I think it's got 4 million books in it now.
Right.
But I went into the library, and I looked at the books all over the shelves, and I said to Heavenly Father, God, I can't do this shit. Look at all these books. I can't know anything about astral projection and out of body. And he said, David, just rub your hands along the bookshelves, the books. And when you feel the warmth of the book, pull it down. And I pulled down right about 16, 22 books. And I put them on a table. And I opened them up, and they all cross-referenced each other. And that's when I built my first master's thesis on sudden infant death.
Well, so now, what year did you have Reed Bradford as a teacher?
72. 71, 72.
Okay, because I had him at 74.
Okay, I was already graduated, and he was still working, and he lived up the hill there a little bit up towards Cedar. Oh, I can't remember the apartment building that was up the hill there. I lived up on the hill there. But I went to his house and had a nice evening with him, and when he told me he adopted that little girl, it just inspired me. And I thought, you know, he wasn't scared of being old. These days, of course, adoptions are very, very difficult, international adoptions. But, anyway.
Well, I survived for years on that hub of the will
concept, sure.
philosophy. it's just so refreshing to meet someone that remembers Reed Bradford.
He's fond in my memories. I remember the auditoriums where he spoke full, and students crowded in the doorways and sitting on the staircases to listen to his lectures.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I wanted to tell you too, I know you don't necessarily have mentors, but when I first left the church in '96, I started studying, and I ran across Sandra Tanner.
Yes, Sandra Tanner and I have a quasi little bit of a relationship. I was always taught that her and was her husband's name Gerald? I think.
Gerald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always taught by BYU that they were evil people. And that they were apostates and, working the devil. About a year ago, I did a video on my Sir David the Bard channel, and I apologized to Sandra. She's still alive. Even today, I think she's still alive.
Yeah, she's
the White House Ministries, I think, is what she was doing. And I told her, I said, I'm asking for your forgiveness. I was taught that you were evil, that your husband was evil, and I was a child, and I hated you and your husband, and I've learned now that that is not true, and I'm asking for your forgiveness, and I'll be damned if she didn't respond back and said, David, I forgive you.
Oh, that's just like her. Yeah, I went to her bookstore years ago and met her in person. But I just think she's a sweetheart, and she's one who didn't throw Jesus out with the Mormon bathwater, That's
right.
And the same with Grant Palmer. I was a fan of Grant Palmer's writing, but he still loved Jesus, and Carolyn Pearson has been a mentor of mine for years with her little poetry books. But anywho, so this coming week, what's on your plate for this coming week?
Well, I've been inspired of how to put the baby book together. I'm going to put it together in chapters, highlighting each sensory input. Hearing, after I've done this study of the cat and what that cat did, and I went to medical journals, and hearing is one of the first sensory systems that turns on in a neonate baby. The budding of the ears comes very, very quickly, within weeks, but the actual hearing, the baby can hear mother's heartbeat, its own heartbeat, the rushing of blood, and as the hearing develops, the baby can hear voices, can hear mom and dad arguing, it can hear music. So that is a sensory system now that has been highlighted to me spiritually. And I had Celine, my nurse here, the other day, and she and I are somewhat close. And Celine was holding the hand of her grandmother when the grandmother took her last breath. And Celine knows my sensory outlook on life. And she said, David, she said, I've been in many hospice situations, and the last sensory system that shuts down is hearing. And that came to me in like a spiritual lightning rod. And basically, in REM sleep, all of the sensory systems are shut down except hearing.
Wow.
And so that cat, and what you've gone through with your beautiful cat, when I go into that chapter on hearing, I'm going to recommend that if parents have a cat and a dog also can smell and has sensory systems far above the human, and I've seen dogs protect children and household members, and they're able with the blind to be a seeing eye dog. They have high intelligence. So anyway, hearing your story of the preciousness of your cat, what it did for you, and for what I've studied, and then Celine telling me that hearing is the last sensory system to shut down, hit me that eyesight is important, but not in the womb. There is no eyesight in the womb. And the eyesight, the first weeks or 2 or 3, are very, very poor. Yeah, they can see, light and maybe even colors of light. I don't know. But eventually, between the 2nd and 4th month, the eyes turn on. And that is the peak month of sudden infant death, the 2nd to the 4th month. And so that hearing is sustaining the baby not only in the womb, but at birth. And then the other thing that has haunted me, and I'm still struggling with it, is there's no sudden infant death the first 72 hours after birth. It doesn't exist.
Oh.
And there has to be a reason for that. And if I think that reason is that birth is so traumatizing. I've done a lot of tank studies on sensory deprivation. When you put a person in water, body temperature water, you block the sound, etc. Women can last longer in deprivation tanks than men can, but no one has gone more than about 19 hours. McGill University in the 50s packed students in cotton and put them in a cotton cardboard box, and none of them lasted more than a day and a half. And we know that when that baby is in the amniotic fluid, now I found this out too that I didn't know. I didn't know that the baby swallows the amniotic fluid on a regular basis. That's when mom has a pizza or a bad garlic or whatever, that amniotic fluid reflects the mother's digestive system. And so the baby not only smells, but it tastes. Those sensory systems are already on in the womb.
Mm-hmm. Yep, fascinating. It is. It's just so fascinating to me. Yeah, well, I ate peanut M&Ms all the way through one pregnancy, and that daughter's overweight, so I always worried that it's because...
Well,
yeah, she's...
I eat peanut M&Ms all the time. That and Diet Coke is basically my favorite, and it's been that way for 70 years. We all have to have some kind of negativity. Hopefully it's something as simple as that. But that baby does taste, and it does smell, it does hear.
Yeah.
It doesn't see. I used to think the main sensory system was sight, because we know after the 3rd or 4th month, sight is the main sensory input. The mother's gaze. We know when a mother is breastfeeding and looks down on her baby and the baby looks up, the most sensitive parts of a human is the mouth and the breast. And when they were doing studies on babies that were not breastfed were dying, and they were saying, well, it was the breast milk. They didn't have that colostrum, and they didn't have all those vitamins. That's not what it was. It was the skin contact. When they missed that skin contact, that tactile input, the sensory system, is not picking up as much as it needs to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, David, I always feel so enlightened and invigorated when talking to you, and I do again want to tell you thank you. I appreciate your kind words about my cat, and I think I'll get through this grieving process. And I do know that my cat, when back in 2012, my mother had been dead several years, but I had a dream one night, and it was one of those vivid dreams
that you remember just like it was yesterday.
Yeah, and in my dream, my mother, who looked really young, by the way, in the dream, was handing me this gray cat with an orange spot on its forehead, just above its left eye. And so the next morning, my roommate that I was living with up by Memory Grove, she was flying to Paris, France that day. And she said, let's take our coffee and walk up to Memory Grove. So on our way there, I told her about my dream. And she says, oh, no, don't start that cat thing. We're not going to get a cat and blah, blah, blah. Well, we get up to Memory Grove where the wedding chapel is, and there is a big van called Kitty Rescue. And they were doing adoptions, and I said, let's just go look at the cats. And she says, okay, but we're not getting one. And we go over there, and the first cage I came to, David, this is a true story, was a cat named Paris with an orange spot on its forehead.
That's not a coincidence now, is it?
No.
It's not a coincidence.
No, that dream was so vivid.
Absolutely. It was foretelling of what the future, so that when you saw that cat, you knew it had some meaning in your soul contract.
Yes.
And it lasted, what, 15 years, right?
Yep. I adopted her that very day. But so I'll see you on Tuesday, Sir David.
That sounds great. I appreciate that. And also, remember this. When these animals and humans pass, some of their spiritual content is left. If you take the cat box, if you take the favorite blanket, and you put that over your knees and sit with it, you'll feel that presence. Now, it won't be there for many days or months or years, but with a recent passing like that, the spirit does leave a sigh, PSI, trailing. You'll feel the spirit of that little animal, and that will bring you some peace, some comfort, and you may want to, just keep a piece of her blanket or keep a piece of her box as a memory. That's important.
Yes.
That's important.
Before I buried her, I shaved off some of her cat fur because I have these little Christmas tree ornaments that are empty cat shapes of cats, and I've stuffed them all full of her hair. So I have that memory of her. But anyway, thank you. It's what I need.